get ready to say goodbye to this dated orange dresser set. It looks like it's in pretty good shape, but it does have some dents and dings, and this broken piece, that's not good. Got some broken drawers to deal with. There's one down there. This big heavy drawer on the tall dresser, it's a double wide. That's broken. So I've got some things to fix. Thankfully, the outer edge is solid wood. The middle of the dresser top is MDF. So what I'm dealing with here is wood. First thing I need to get started with, though, is this big repair. So I am able to easily take this off. That makes life easier, but I've got chunks of glue that were there. So I'm going to take my Dremel just to sand off all of the parts of the glue. The Dremel makes quick work of this. This glue is very old, so it's just hard and brittle, but it wouldn't be a good thing to go ahead and just leave it there and add more glue. So I need to get it all taken off. And again, if you don't have a Dremel, it would be a great investment. They're not very expensive. This is even a corded one. I mean, they have fancy adjustable speed, cordless, whatever. I have just a basic one, but this one with the little sander tip, I use that the most. All right, we've got it all cleaned up. Let's get this reattached. I first do a dry fit always. Want to make sure it's good to go before I start getting the glue out. I use the Gorilla wood glue. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of wood glue. I just particularly like this one. I've never had a problem with it not being super adhesive, so I'm putting plenty of glue on. I do not want this to come back off. This part of the dresser is pretty vulnerable because this is where most people move their dressers around, and when they pick them up, they usually grab this part. And I'm just making sure it's well seated. I want to get it all the way down, all the way in, so I've got a rubber mallet. And now when I think that it's in the right position, I'm just going to add some brad nails. And the nails that I was putting in there, I didn't feel like were quite long enough. So let me get out the big guns. This is an 18 gauge set. I'm going to 1.25 inches now. I think I was just at 5/8 before. So we'll get those loaded in. And a brad nailer, another really good investment. I use this all the time. I never thought I needed a brad nailer so much, but apparently I do. So I have kind of eyeballed where this is going into the dresser body, so I'm not just completely free nailing. I'm kind of making an educated guesstimate, and I nailed it, literally. Here's another detail I don't want. I do not like that little, it's like ivy. So I'm trying to see, should I add a piece of trim? I'm not sure if I like that. And then I have these little wooden circles that I ordered a while ago that I keep looking for a reason to use them. And I thought, well, maybe if I glued them on here. That might be kind of cute. The little circles that go all the way across. I've got lots of them. I don't know, I just can't decide. And then I thought maybe I just cover it with some edge banding. That might work. Or edge banding and wooden circles. I don't know. I mean, this is really how this process goes. Sometimes I have a plan and sometimes I don't. And the plan just develops as I'm going. Sometimes the dresser decides depending on what will work and what won't. I know that I don't like this overhang. It's very long. It extends, I feel like it extends too far away from the dresser, and I don't like the rounded edges. I think it just dates it, and I want to square these off so it becomes a little more modern. So I marked where I want to cut it, and now I'm just putting my blade on where I think it's going to cut, and I'm going to put the board up against it just to use as a nice straight edge and a guide, so I'm making a straight cut. Added some clamps. I clamped both ends, just testing again to make sure that my saw is going to be in the right spot. I clamped the other end, and I'm just double checking that they are in the right place. Measure twice, cut once, and here's the cut once. So I am using a small 4.5-inch circular saw. This is a cordless DeWalt. There's a lot of makers that these are getting more and more popular because the big, 8-inch blade circular saws, 10-inch blade circular saws, they're great for big jobs and cutting 2x4s and huge fence boards and things. But I just don't really need that. And this saw just kind of makes it feel less intimidating, I guess. I love power tools, but when it comes to the big saws, I feel like if they kick out of there and come at me, I'm freaking out. So this saw is, I feel like, super user-friendly. A little 4.5-inch blade. I mean, it gets the job done. And I think that looks better already, although now it's blaring at me, that ivy, I can't stand it. Same thing on this side, get everything set, make my cut. Everything I do on this dresser, I'm also going to be doing on the tall dresser. I'm just not necessarily showing everything, but these are identical dressers, just different configuration. I'm gonna finish them exactly the same, so you may not see all the same cuts and everything on the other one, although I am doing it. So I have to hold this board because I could only clamp one end, but still came out just fine. Everything went great. Removed the clamps and I love it. So much better already. I mean, do you get any luckier than this? I just cut the front of this off because I wanted to square it off. I don't like the little detail right here. That little engraved part, don't like it. I've been going round and round with different options about how to cover it. I pick up my scrap piece of wood off the floor. I mean, seriously, that's gonna be perfect. I'm happy. Well, now that I have that problem solved, time to get on to removing hardware. These are wooden knobs with a wood screw that just screws right into them. And yep, not keeping those. Into the trash. Hardware is one of those things that they're kind of, oh, I found some lucky money. Lucky pennies, I'll take it. Anyway, hardware, it's one of those things that it's kind of personal. I mean, it's like earrings and things, you really want them to fit the style. And they make such a big difference on how they overall look. Okay, so you saw me with a crud cutter. That's a degreaser. I like to get everything clean, ready to go. So when I sand, I'm sanding a clean surface, not a gunky, dirty surface. I'm scuff sanding. I'm just getting out and softening all of the little dings and nicks. And of course, smoothing the edge where I made that cut. But time for some Bondo. This is my Bondo kit. I don't want to have to search for anything. I keep it all in one spot. So I've got my Bondo. I have a can opener, a hardener, it's a spreader. So I'm gonna use a lot of Bondo here. If you don't like Bondo, I'm sorry, but over the next few minutes, there will be quite a lot of it. How much cream hardener do you use? About that much. There is no exact measurement for it. So you'll see some people use Bondo and they use a tiny little bit. And I like to use more than that. So this is my spreader. I think these cost $3 and worth every penny because you just don't get this smooth application with tongue depressor or whatever, a little wooden stick you're using or what. Good investment. And then if the Bondo dries on it, it just peels right off. So I am covering up this detail that we call the crumb catcher. 40 years worth of I don't know what is probably in that, and it never paints well. So a lot of times I do cover them up. You'll see I gunk it in there and I'm pressing, and then I scrape it off and I do build it up over the top because once you sand, if you didn't build it up a little bit, you'll have a divot. And I want to make this disappear. Make sure you wear your mask while you're doing this as also because Bondo is not good to breathe. Okay, just continuing scuff sanding a bit of the highboy. And gonna scuff sand the body of the long dresser. If you see these areas that come out, it's because there was either a mark from the hardware or a dent, and I don't want to keep that there, and I don't want to cover my entire dresser with tiny little bits of spackling paste or more Bondo everywhere, so I pretty much sand those. I'm removing all the drawers and I'm numbering them because I have already done drawer Jenga. I've already figured out where they go, and I don't want to play around with them when I put them back in, because you think you take them out in order and then you do move them here and then you sand them over here and pretty soon they're in the wrong order, and then you have to sit and do drawer Jenga again to get them all in the right spot. So I just number them, and then there's a no-brainer when you put them back in. While they're out, I have an opportunity to get everything nice and clean. I want a spick and span dresser. I don't want any dust in my paint, and I want to deliver a clean dresser to my client, whoever the lucky buyer may be. I'm checking all the drawer guides, and whoop, that one doesn't look right. I think we have a problem, but I have a scrap pile. I have had to dismantle a few dressers that were just garbage and save all the parts. So these are out of a very old dresser. I'm glad I saved it because I don't want to have to recreate this. I'm using the old drawer guide as a template. Got a few things to cut off. The old dresser had this mounted differently, so I got to cut that piece off. And then of course I want to make it the right length. And get out my saw. This huge saw is a little overkill to cut this one thing, but if I have a power tool, I might as well use it, right? Okay, so I've got that cut to length. Excited to get this in, and hopefully it will all work well. I used the other template, or I used the old one as a template to actually even drill the holes. So I drilled right through it. So this is going to be an exact fit. I've got screws already just finger tightened in the holes, because I do not have one of those bendy attachments for my drill, which is on my list I need to get. I don't know why I haven't gotten it yet. So I have to use this tiny little screwdriver to put these screws in. You can't get a lot of torque on a tiny little screwdriver, so this is not ideal, but this is how this had to go. But hey, it worked, because look at that. The drawer works perfectly. Okay, now to address this trim that I was so lucky just fell on the floor and boom, came into my life just when I needed it. And now I get to cover up that ivy detail. However, I had to cut these. They were a little too long. So I cut it off. One end has that nice curve. The other one was blunt. So I am trying to recreate the other end and just round these. I've got a 120 grit, I think, on my sander, and I'm just using it to make this edge round. It only took me about 2 minutes. There it is. Boom. And I also want to these, for some reason, well, not for some reason, the edge of a dresser top just gets brutalized. It's just beaten up. This was covered in little nicks and dings, so I really wanted to sand it smooth. And there it is. Perfect and ready to go. So let's get this on the dresser. More glue. This is not going anywhere. No one will ever see that ivy detail again. I know people may not like me for that. Some people may love that detail, but I'm doing this and I don't like it. So there it goes. It's gone. Gonna add a few brad nails. I went back to the 5/8 inch because the other ones were too long and too kind of overkill for this. So just securing it. The glue is really going to be the thing here, but I just want to make sure it doesn't go anywhere while that glue is setting, and it's kind of a tough area to clamp. So I'm just adding my brad nails. Add a few more for good measure, just because I like to use my brad nailer maybe. No, I really want this to stay put. So I put brad nails all across the front. I'm just wiping away any excess glue. And there it is. I love it. I think that was just the perfect thing, and I love reusing things. So I got to recycle a piece off this dresser, and I think it was just perfect. and then go back in with a little bit of wood filler just to cover those little holes from the brad nailer. Here we go. We're using our labeled drawers. Makes life so easy. Look, they don't even go in the same order. They're kind of all over the place. Guess what? These are almost ready to paint. Just get them cleaned up and we're ready. They've been through a lot. They look like they're beat up, but actually that's a nice smooth surface, ready to go. So this is a job for my extra large spray tent that I make out of a 12 by 12 Easy Up. See, I've got the Easy Up sidewalls and canvas on the bottom. I can spray 5 pieces in this if I want. Time to prime. This is when the transformation really begins because you start to get rid of all the blotchy wood and you really start seeing what a solid surface with paint this is going to look like. It's going to be really pretty. I'm using Insulix Sticks primer. This is my favorite primer. It's a bonding primer and it has great coverage. I didn't apply a super thick coat and you really can barely see those faint areas where I sanded all the way through the finish, so they're really white. But now after this primer dries, this is one of the most important steps. You've got to sand it. I'm using a sanding sponge. This is about a 330 grit, but this is gonna make your paint look buttery smooth because a lot of those areas I had sanded down to bare wood and they really get really rough when you put water-based primer on. I also had this area, some of the places around the base where it attaches to the dresser had a gap, so I filled that with some paintable primer. This is a pine dresser, so I have a few knots in some areas that needed a little extra wood filler. While all of that's drying, let's mix some paint. I use these 3 colors by Farmhouse. Farmhouse is my favorite paint, and I love to create colors. So into the paint lab we go. I mixed those 3 and created this cool color. It's a little more blue than you're seeing here, but it's looking gray. And I needed to strain it because these are remnant paints and they're sometimes have dried paint in it. It'll clog my sprayer if I don't strain it. Look at that color though. Blue-gray. Love it. Let's make it happen. The paint went in the sprayer and ready to put it on the dresser. I know my tent is blue, so it's kind of hard to see the color going on, but I'm really happy with this color. And again, after it's all dry, what am I going to do? I'm going to sand. I will do this in between every layer as well as in between top coats. And then I go in with a barely damp microfiber cloth. There's tack cloths and all kinds of things. I find this is the best thing to take off dust. Here's a second coat of paint. This is Farmhouse Evolution Paint. I don't even know of the last time I had to use more than 2 coats. Okay, I get tons of questions about why I paint with the drawers in. Because overall, it's the best. It keeps the inside of the cabinet clean. I don't have to mask off. However, I do have to go and paint these details. This is just from the overhang of the edge of the drawer, and in between either coats of paint or between paint and top coat, I go in with a little poly sponge brush and just touch all those up, let it dry, and then put the drawers back in. This is top coat going on. I will sand and do another layer of top coat. I did 3 of those. Here's a look back at where we started, and here we are. I think it's a beautiful neutral grayish blue. I put all new black hardware on there. There were 30 knobs. Lots of knobs went on. But overall, I think this was a huge improvement over the old orange. I hope you like it and follow for more.